If you're a member of Generation Z, which for context is anyone born between 1997 and 2012, there's a high chance you've experienced or are currently experiencing some degree of loneliness. Studies show that a significant 73% of Gen Z report feeling lonely at some point in their lives, and upwards of 20% report having no significant friends. And these issues go beyond just platonic friendships. Statistics show that anywhere from a third or more of men 18 to 25 report having no sexual or romantic relationships within the past year. These numbers are scary, and they're far from what anyone could consider normal for a society. Now, if you're Gen Z and you've been experiencing these issues, you've probably been told either by your parents or by older peers that you just need to put down that damn phone and go socialize. I've personally gotten this talk from my own parents, and while I understand they're trying to help, they just don't get how things are for younger people today. For example, there are periods of time where I will spend all day, every day, sitting in my room on my phone or my computer. My parents will come in and tell me how depressing it is that I'm just wasting time online. And I always agree with them on that point. But there really isn't much else to do. Their response is usually just, oh, go out and meet people. But what is out? Where is out? The problem is there's nowhere out for young people to go. Let's say I go to a bar. Unless you live in a major city, chances are the bar will be mostly older people in their 30s and up. Very rarely do I go to a bar in a town outside a city and see young people my age. If you are a young person in a small town, your chances of meeting other young people out and about are frankly just slim. Fortunately, I do live in an urban area, so it's not too hard for me specifically to meet younger folks when I go out to, let's say, a bar or a nightclub. But even then, these types of environments aren't great for meeting people. Most of the time, there's loud music blasting, and on top of that, everyone is at least a little intoxicated. Not exactly the best way to meet new people, especially if you're not super extroverted. And meeting girls at a bar or a club, that's even harder. If you're not extremely charismatic or like super handsome, it's gonna be really hard. Honestly, this is one of the main reasons I think things like black pill and looks maxing have gotten popular, because a lot of guys just aren't able to attract women in these kinds of environments. The problem is there really aren't other places for us to meet friends or romantic partners. There just aren't social spaces for younger generations outside of bars and clubs. Society really lacks places where the average young people can just go and hang out without loud music or drugs involved. One thing I think Gen Z really misses compared to older generations is third places. A third place is basically an informal social space outside of the home, which would be the first place, and work or school, which would be the second place. Many third places that were normal for young people in the 2000s and earlier have disappeared or become way less accessible in the last 10 to 20 years. A big example would be shopping malls. Even a decade or two ago, malls were places where people, especially young people, would go, not necessarily to even just shop, but just to hang out and socialize. I'm on the older side of Gen Z, so I can vaguely remember a time when malls were the places teenagers went to just to be around each other. Now, visit your local mall, and it's gonna be mostly empty, even on a weekend. Most stores are closed or shuttered. Outside major cities, this is basically the state of malls across the country. They are all practically abandoned at this point. Other examples would include things like bowling alleys, skating rinks, music venues, and even local parks. I've heard stories of older people meeting their spouses at skating rinks or at some other random place. Today, that seems almost impossible. I can't even remember the last time I even went to a skating rink, and sure, parks exist, but when's the last time you went to one and it was full of teens and young adults? Anytime I go to a park, it's mostly parents with their kids or older people on power walks. And even assuming you go to a skating rink, our generation is so antisocial that if you try to even, talk to someone in your age group that isn't your friend, you come off as weird. Just in general, there are way fewer young people anywhere. You could argue that part of this is because we are addicted to social media and most people would rather stay inside on their devices. That's definitely true. Social media has really hurt our generation's social skills. There's another reason, though, that nobody really talks about. There are just fewer young people now than there were in the past, and you can back this up with statistics. Right after World War II, millions of soldiers came back home, and the first thing a lot of them did was get busy, really busy. This led to an unprecedented population boom in the West, called the baby boom. By the early 1970s, roughly 50% of the population was under the age of 25. That's a huge number of young people, and you can imagine what society looked like then. You could live in a small town and see lots of people your age just by going outside. Combine that with more of an abundance of third places, and it was just much easier for people in that generation to socialize and find partners. Compare that to today. As of 2025, only 31% of the population is under the age of 25. Of that, only 21% are Gen Z, 10% from the younger half, and 11% from the older half. For comparison, during the baby boomers' youth, they made up about 37% of the US population. Today, young people are basically a minority, which isn't normal historically or even something normal in many societies today. So why is this happening? Well, each generation since the greatest generation, as they're called, who are the people who fought in World War II, has had fewer kids. Families from the greatest generation, who birthed most baby boomers, averaged about 3 to 4 kids. That peaked with the baby boom, then dropped. By the late 60s into the 80s, the average number of kids per household fell to 1 to 2, which is Gen X's fertility rate, the parents of most Gen Zers. So our generation is smaller, and honestly, that explains a lot of my own experiences. My parents had me in their 30s, and I was an only child for 3 years until my brother was born. A lot of kids my age grew up with no siblings as only children, which I think has very negative effects on your psychological health as well as your social development. And even with a sibling, I still felt lonely, partly because my family wasn't as large as older generations. Baby boomers had more siblings, more cousins, bigger extended families, things we don't see much today in the US. Even the family you do have, people barely stay in contact. My cousins are in their 30s and they live far away. So growing up, it really was just me, my brother, and my parents. And I think humans naturally thrive in bigger family groups, with lots of peers around the same age as you. That's how we develop socially. We're meant to have large families where there are lots of people who are the same age, lots of cousins, lots of siblings, so that you actually interact with people that you know, that you trust, and it helps you develop. And that's still common in a lot of traditional or less developed countries where young people still make up the majority of the population. So I think Gen Z's loneliness comes from 3 main factors: lack of social skills from early social media exposure, lack of community and third places, and simply just being in fewer numbers compared to older generations. Put all that together, and it's no mystery why our generation has the highest rates of depression and loneliness ever recorded in human history. Now, I don't really know what the solution is. Our society is aging fast, and this trend isn't reversing anytime soon. It's likely that things will only get worse. It's very possible that society will continue down the digital rabbit hole. VR and AI companionship are already becoming substitutes for real-life social interaction for a lot of people. As these technologies continue to advance, we are going to see more people choose these as surrogates for real-life relationships. Realistically, I think we might see a split. Some people will fully immerse themselves in the digital world, while others will reject non-essential technology and move towards simpler lives closer to nature. In the next century, we might see a rise of groups similar to what the Amish already do, who forgo all non-essential technology. Now, while most of us have little to no control right now over the state of society, there are things we can do as individuals. For starters, you need to be limiting your social media and tech usage. Not cut them out entirely, but use them differently. Instead of doom scrolling, find or create communities that actually connect you with people in real life. I've done this myself. Posting content on YouTube and Instagram about my interests has led to real-life meetups and many long-term friendships. For third places, I think there's hope too. A lot of Gen Zers are getting tired of the club and drinking culture. We are seeing younger people drinking less, wanting social spaces that aren't centered on alcohol. Over time, more spaces could emerge where we can socialize sober, just hang out, and meet people naturally. At the end of the day, the only thing you can control is your own life. You could stay lonely, or you can make an effort to build your own social circle. It's not easy, it's an uphill battle, but if you want positive change, you've got to make hard choices. Limit social media, get out when you can, find or create communities, and focus on real connections. Our loneliness is real. It's frustrating, it's heavy, but it's not unfixable. It's up to us to take small steps that can make a big difference. And maybe, just maybe, we can start building a world where we don't have to feel so alone.